The title of this podcast is Don't Let the Extraordinary Become Ordinary. And this is inspired by something that I thought about the other day. When it comes to the things that most of us say that we appreciate, like kindness and gratitude, experiencing joy and love, having connection, living with purpose, some of those things can become very trivial if we are not mindful. I know that was definitely the case for me. I took so much for granted before. And what ends up happening is the external starts to define how you see the world, as opposed to you defining the world you see. And it's easy to do that, especially in a day and age like this, where if you are not carving out time, even 5 minutes, to really nurture and to cultivate kindness, gratitude, joy, love, compassion, connection, purpose, higher meaning. If you're not taking the time to do that, then they become trivial. And then little by little, they just start to go away. I mean, I'm often have gone to places, several years after I was last there. And I've watched it just kind of, you know, become run down. You start to see that the landscape, which is really taken care of over the years, not be tended to. And then you start to see what the overgrowth looks like. You start to see what it looks like when weeds are growing up through even what was once just concrete to where you thought there could be no growth. The buildings become rusty and old. The pavement becomes uneven. There's potholes everywhere. There's all these deficits that occur. The same thing happens in relationships if you don't nurture them. The person who's a love of your life or a loved one, children, you just kind of are two ships passing in the night. And all these things happen. And so what I have made it a purpose is to come into each day with my full attention, with awareness. But I have to set myself up for that. And the way that I set myself up for that is by not making my practice something that's trivial, not making it just something on my to-do list, but understanding that it is the access and the opening for me to have a really full and rich day, no matter what shows up, what happens in that day, but to have that kind of experience. And that's possible. And how do we know it's possible? It says you can take two people, one of which is living with purpose, and the other person who is just surviving. And they can be in the exact same situation, the exact same. How does one person come in with an optimistic, positive, loving, kind, cheerful attitude, and the other person doesn't? I mean, they're living the same experience. And this was certainly true for me when I was in the military. I had one guy who experienced the exact same things that I did when we were both in Operation Desert Storm in the Middle East. We were both in the desert. We both had the same government issued sleeping bags, boots, helmet, weapon. Everything was exactly the same. We were treated no differently, except he had a peaceful way about himself. He had a positive attitude, and I didn't. There was something that he was doing that I was blind to, both literally and figuratively, that I missed it. But along the way, he was cultivating kindness and joy and being loving and connection and purpose. He was doing those things so he would show up peaceful. They were not trivial for him, but they were certainly trivial for me. How do I know? Because I didn't make time for them. And by not making time for them, I didn't make time for my loved ones. I didn't make time for myself. Now, there is the making time for yourself that is achievement oriented, but that's not what, for me, at least, and some other people that I've talked to, that really gives you the juice that Rick says is in every moment of life that's available to you. What that did for me was just kind of put me on this hamster wheel, and I found I had no way of getting off. I mean, I was just on this thing all the time. And when I would like doze off, I would get like this jolt or this shock, and I would start running on the wheel again, as opposed to stepping off the wheel and letting the wheel just do its own circles and turns and whatever it does, while I was able to be the observer of all that happening and occurring. And so I've made it this point to nurture, cultivate, and honor all these things that I've taken for granted that I think just going to happen on their own, but they're not. I have to make them happen, but now I'm going to honor them. And when I think about living in this amazing country that we do, it can become pretty easy to fall victim of being negative, of feeling helpless and hopeless, or having despair, or being angry. I mean, all of those are very easy to do. And what I see quite a few people cultivating those things. And I would have been right there with them, cultivating those things, having grievances, complaining, and judging along the way. And in doing that, it would, of course, strengthen my ego. I'd have felt right about it and justified. And I'd have found a lot of proof. Confirmation bias would have been plentiful, but I wouldn't have been happy. I wouldn't have been peaceful. And I wouldn't have been a contribution to the country, to the world, to my community, or to myself. And so that's a choice. So now with this wellness practice, it only takes a few minutes. I mean, if I don't have a few minutes for that, man, what am I doing this for, man? I mean, the only time I come to is for a photo opportunity with family and friends. The other time I'm just surviving, hanging on, and not even conscious that I'm surviving. I'm just looking for the next break. That's one way to go through life. But there's another way to go through. And I'm grateful that I've discovered it. But the discovery alone isn't enough. You have to be committed to doing the work to maintain it. And in the beginning, it becomes effortful until you make it a non-negotiable, that this is what I'm going to do no matter what happens. And then it becomes effortless. And that's what I'm on now. This has become effortless for me. I wake up no matter what time it is, no matter how little sleep I've gotten, no matter what's going on in the world, this is happening because I stand a greater chance of cultivating those things that mean the most to me. The joy, the kindness, the love, the connection, the compassion, and the gratitude, and cultivating the inner peace if I've begun it this way. And I haven't made those things trivial, but understand that it's my responsibility to cultivate them. If I want that to be my gift to the world, my loved ones, and to myself. So again, don't allow the extraordinary to become ordinary.